did your party suppress legitimate questions from elected office bearers, and if so, why? And a second question, if I may, do you apologise to those who donated to the party? Will they get their money back, and will you instruct an independent inquiry?
Well, on the point about donations, party members have made those donations to the SNP. We don't have that money. It's been stolen from us. What I will say is that I can confidently say to members of the party that the money they donate to us is money that is used to further the aims and the objectives of the SNP, and it always will be. In terms of how party members are feeling, you know, I feel the same way as party members, because I'm one of those people that donates to the SNP as well. So I feel the hurt and the anger and the betrayal that members of the party will feel. Now, obviously, what I've done is made sure the SNP's got good governance and good financial management in place, and that's exactly what we need to have at all times. And then on your first point, Glenn, obviously these issues have been thoroughly investigated by the police. There has been criminality here. There is no more detailed scrutiny than a police investigation of criminality. And for me, that's exactly what has been appropriate in this case.
But might you have caught this much earlier if questions from office bearers within your party had been properly addressed?
Well, as the information, and I'm conscious, and colleagues will understand today, that I have to be mindful of the Contempt of Court Act, so there is a level of detail that I have to be careful not to go into. But the material which emerged from the court indicated that there had been a period of criminality that goes back to 2010. So there has been an extensive period. And indeed, in the police statement, the Assistant Chief Constable, Stuart Houston, says that from 2010 to 2022, Peter Murrell spent hundreds of thousands of pounds on luxury goods while carefully trying to hide his criminality with false receipts and accounting. So I think the issues that we're dealing with here have been issues of a long-standing nature, and we need to have in the SNP strong financial controls and governance process in place, and that's what we have. James Cook.
Just on the Contempt of Court Act 1981, just as a point of fact, I mean, it's our understanding that that essentially prevents or is designed primarily to mitigate the risk of substantial risk of serious prejudice in the event of a trial. It's not going to be a trial, so I'm not quite sure why we... Okay, well, let me just... the Contempt of Court Act continues to apply until Peter Murrell is sentenced. No. So that's... I'm not saying this to be difficult. I'm simply saying it to give absolute clarity, because I am speaking today in my capacity as leader of the Scottish National Party, and as someone who believes in the rule of law, I have to be mindful of the legal context in which I'm speaking. So that's the only point I'm making. I understand that, and it wasn't my question.
And I'll try to, and we'll try to go through the answering the questions in a way that is as helpful as possible.
We deal with the Contempt of Court Act a lot, and we can be pretty free in what we're saying today. That's all I'm saying. The question I have for you is, you know, you're saying you're making sure now, in 2026, that the SNP has good governance and financial management in place. You led this party more than 20 years ago. I hear what you're saying. Peter Murrell, who was at the heart of your party, turned out to be a common thief. But could you not have done more to prevent something like this happening? Do you personally, and other people who've led the party, take any accountability for that?
Well, the issues here are about the criminality of Peter Murrell. That is what's at stake here. So whatever else we talk about in and around about that, it is the criminality of Peter Murrell that has given rise to the situation that we face today. And that is what we cannot escape in our discussions today. That is the source of the problem, which is the criminal behaviour of Peter Murrell. That's it.
No, but I'm not disputing that. But I'm saying, what about the accountability in terms of, if you're saying now there needs to be better governance, why didn't you put in place better governance when you first led the party?
I'm simply saying that the issues that are at stake today are about the criminality of Peter Murrell. That is what has caused the situation we face today, and at all times we should have in place strong and effective governance, and that's what I reassure party members is the case today. Peter Smith.
First Minister, thank you. Was it a mistake for the SNP to have allowed the Chief Executive to be married to the leader of the party?
Ultimately, the issues that are at stake here, as I've just said to James, were all about the behaviour of Peter Murrell, and individuals are responsible for their own conduct and their own actions, and that's what has essentially arisen out of the guilty plea in the court today. Well, that's not something that was within my gift. But what is important is that we recognise throughout all of our discussions the centrality of the behaviour at stake here, which is the criminal behaviour of Peter Murrell, for which he is responsible, and he will now have to face the consequences.
Do you recognise any governance as part of that?
Well,
when people were complaining, they were complaining to the party chief executive's wife.
Well, I'm simply saying that we now have good and strong governance in place to ensure that can be assured to party members.
You haven't yet said sorry to the people who donated.
Well, I tried to do that in what I said in one of my earlier answers to Glenn Campbell, that I am one of those people. I'm one of those people who contributes to the SNP. I do it willingly. I do it genuinely with enthusiasm because I believe in what we're doing. So I feel absolutely the same agony that other party members feel today, because this should not have happened. These circumstances should never have arisen. That somebody entrusted with a leading position in the party should have embezzled party funds. It just should not have happened. It should, Peter should have known this was the wrong thing to do and should not have done it. But I'm simply explaining to you that the situation I find myself in today is I'm one of those people, Peter. I'm one of those donors to the party, and that money has been used inappropriately. So I regret that. I'm sorry for what's happened. I'm sorry to party members who feel that way, but I'm one of them too. Catherine.
Nicola Sturgeon told SNP members in 2021 not to ask questions about the SNP's finances. She was very adamant money hasn't gone missing. We now know those party members were asking legitimate questions. Will you apologise to those members? Do you think Nicola Sturgeon herself was misled and is a victim?
Well, Nicola Sturgeon has made clear in her statement, I suspect you will have seen that today, that she was unaware of any of these issues.
Can I ask you if you believe that?
I do believe that, yes. I do believe that. And I think the statement that Nicola has made conveys the depth of her personal agony about this. And I believe that, and I accept that, and I acknowledge that, because it is, if I feel as sore as I feel today, Catherine, I can't begin to imagine how Nicola Sturgeon feels. So,
how do you think the people who raised valid concerns feel, though? And just once again, will you apologise to those people in your party?
I think what I would say to people is that we've got to have good governance arrangements in place, and that's exactly what the SNP has got, with transparent financial reporting on a regular basis to our party executive, with a variety of different controls in place to ensure that the planning and the spending of our resources is done effectively to meet the needs of our campaigns and the purpose for which the money is raised. Okay, can I now come to Shinge Marariki, please? Shinge.
First Minister, we have just seen millions spent on an investigation into your former chief executive, who spent more than £400,000 worth of party money on himself. Does this not look like a disaster? How can the public have faith in your party and wider politics in Scotland?
I think the issues that we're wrestling with here today, Shinge, have been fairly significantly commented upon for the last number of years. I think it'd be hard-pressed to see a story that's not been more aired in the course of the last, 4 years, 3-4 years or so. So the public, I think, have seen all of this. They've seen the material. And okay, we've got to an absolutely critical point today because it's an admission of guilt today. But but the public had all that in front of them, and we've just gone through an election in which all these issues have been all part of the general political debate in Scotland, and the public have come to their conclusions and given us the election mandate they've given to us. One of the central points in that election campaign, and I feel this intensely personally, is that I offered, I came into the leadership of the SNP to rebuild the SNP because it was in a bad place. And I did that because I care deeply with every fibre of my body, and I have done all my adult life for the well-being of the SNP and its cause of Scottish independence. And at a time of need, I came in and addressed those issues. And that's what I've done that internally, and I've done it externally as well, because my leadership was pretty much on the line. Well, it was on the line in the election campaign. The proposition I put to the public...
Joanna Cherry's in the back of this room. She's come out and asked for you to resign. Does that not look like dysfunction rather than a party that's being repaired by yourself?
No. And I've addressed the issue about the comments that you've cited to me. Can I come to Daniel Van Reenen, please? Sorry, my apologies.
These offences happened over a lengthy period of time when you were in a senior position within the SNP. Did you ever suspect Mr. Murrell of anything over that period, and how can people trust the SNP moving forward?
I never suspected anything. As a matter of clarity, I didn't hold any formal office in the SNP between 2004 and 2024, when I resumed the party leadership. But I never suspected anything. I had no reason to suspect it, because actually part of what I feel about this is that I can't fathom it. I can't understand how you do this. I can't understand how you behave in this fashion. If you're committed to a cause, I'm committed to the cause of Scottish independence. The idea of doing something as damaging to the well-being of our cause as this is beyond me. I just can't fathom it. I have no way of understanding it. So I therefore wouldn't suspect that of people who are signing up to the same journey that I'm signing up to, of making the sacrifices. You all know me well. You know the sacrifices I'm making to do what I'm doing. So the idea that other people are not doing likewise is beyond me. I can't understand it. Jean Davison.
Thanks very much. Professor, there will be people who are watching this and listening to you thinking, this is a married couple, and there were obviously things being purchased from SNP accounts that were going into their marital home. How on earth could one half of that couple not be aware that there's something was up? And how can you, when Douglas Chapman resigned from the NEC because he wasn't allowed to look at the books, stand here today and say that at no point did you think there was anything wrong with what was going on? And also, you've just appointed Kirsten Oswald to your government in a junior ministerial position. She was somebody who people wrote to raise their concerns, and including Joanna Cherry, who is here today, and got no response. How can victims of crime have any faith in her now, in her government position?
I think the points are a bit connected to what I've just responded to Danielle a second ago, which is about the fact that there's a part of me, well, not part of me, I cannot fathom what has happened here. I just cannot understand it. I can't understand the basis of what Peter thought he was doing. So therefore, I don't think I'd be alone in the views shared by others. I don't think I'd be alone in holding that view, that how on earth could something as damaging and disruptive as this be happening. So that's essentially my answer to your question about the various situations that you put to me about how individuals would react to the suggestion or the point that something as awful as this was going on. And I think that's the best way of me explaining why I think people's decisions and the conclusions they would arrive at would be based on almost being unable to fathom something of this happening. It's the same. I apply that in the same situation. My answer is designed to address all your circumstances, Gina, of the fact that I think people would generally take the view, as I have done, I would have no reason to believe that somebody in a senior position would be acting in such a damaging way. And I don't think that's an unusual view for people to take in the situation that I'm talking about. Callum McQuaid. Callum.
How can anyone who's in a position to donate to the SNP ever trust the party again to use the money responsibly?
Well, for two reasons, Callum. I have put in place very, very tight financial provisions to make sure our governance of party finances is done effectively and appropriately. So, for example, our structures of approval of any expenditure is done in a very orderly, proactive approach, with budgets set by the National Executive Committee of the party, financial reporting shared with the National Executive Committee on an open monthly basis. We met, when did we meet? Just last Saturday? Yeah, a week past Saturday. The National Executive Committee got the management accounts up until the 30th of April. So the information is all there, expenditure against budget, authorised and validated by our party officers with multiple scrutiny. So all of that is there to assure people of all of that. And then secondly, I think party members have just gone through all of, as I said in one of my earlier answers, this whole issue has been very much it's been very much out there in political debate. And despite all of that, party members have just given very generously to support us in our election campaign. And without their generosity, we couldn't have fought the 2024 Westminster election campaign. We couldn't have fought the 2026 Holyrood campaign. I'm really grateful to party members for showing such faith in the SNP, because they've given generously to support us in our efforts. Okay, can I come to Rebecca McCarthy, please? Now? Rebecca?
First Minister, it's not clear to me why you can't say sorry to the people who have been betrayed by the SNP, given this was a position whether I appreciate you said that you're also part of that, but what's not clear to me is that this was a position that Peter Murrell was put in by leadership. It's not clear to me why you can't just say sorry to them.
Okay, well look, let me short circuit this. I don't want this to become an issue. I'm sorry to people who are affected, okay? So I'm quite happy to say that. But my point is that the person responsible for this is Peter Murrell. It's not my conduct that's got to this situation, it's Peter Murrell's. So that's the only point I'm making, but if it helps, I'll say sorry to everyone involved. David Ball.
Thank you very much. You knew Peter Murrell for quite a long time. Can I just get an indication of how you're feeling on a personal level about what he's admitted to today? And secondly, we know trust in politics is a low point. And you know what sort of politics that plays into. So how is the SNP going to even begin to start rebuilding that trust with members and the wider public?
I think on the second point, David, I think the issues, again, these issues have not been unfamiliar to the electorate. This has been the subject, news media have covered this comprehensively over the last 3 years, very, very comprehensively. So all of that has been out there in political debate, and the public have just returned an SNP government with over 38% of the vote, 58 seats in the Scottish Parliament, the leading party by a country mile. Why has that been possible? Well, I think it's been possible because of the bonds of trust that the SNP have built up over many years with the electorate in Scotland and the people of Scotland in their service. I think if I can say this, and you can take it for what it's worth, I think people look at me and think that I'm a pretty reliable sort of person to put their trust into, and I feel that very preciously for what the public have done in the election on the 7th of May. So I think that's helped to build some of the relationship, and that will obviously be part of what the SNP has at its disposal in the years to come, because I intend to lead the SNP for some considerable time to come. How am I feeling, David? I am gutted by this today. As I thought about coming here today to do what I've got to do today, this is a tough day, David. So the level of personal horror, betrayal that I feel is difficult for me to properly convey to you. But this is beyond what I'm thinking about. I've not been able to stop thinking about is the decent people who have stood with me at coffee mornings and jumble sales and thrift shops, raising the money and paying their money to party headquarters and paying their memberships. People who I know who don't have much money to rub together but have paid their membership subs to keep the SNP afloat because they believe in independence. So how am I feeling, David? That's how I'm feeling today. Dan Sanderson. Dan.
Thanks, First Minister. So the day after Douglas Chapman stood down as Treasurer, basically because he wasn't allowed to do his job because of Peter Murrell wouldn't show him the books, you were on the BBC, you said you didn't understand his reasons for quitting. There's a huge amount of scrutiny of party finances that go on. That happens daily within the SNP, and so it should. Now, clearly that wasn't true. Do you regret at the time sort of rallying behind Peter Murrell and the establishment and, you know, taking all you've said about you being among the victims in this? Is there not more that you could have done to ask questions? You know, the Treasurer resigned. Surely that's a big red flag.
Well, all the issues, all the ground I've covered today, Dan, is about the party having proper scrutiny in place about its finances, and that's what that's what I believe to be the case. That's what always should be in place in any organisation, and I took the view that that's what would be in place at this particular stage. Now, obviously, as you know, again, let's go back to the statement from Police Scotland, if I can just get it here. Carefully hiding his criminality with false receipts and accounting. That's what was going on at the time, to deceive the proper processes that were in place. So it's not the fault of the processes that we are where we are today. It's the fault of Peter Murrell's conduct that we are where we are today. Sev Carell. Sev.
Thank you, First Minister. I just want to follow up these questions about what you did or knew or believed should have happened at the time. I mean, you were very careful to say that you held no party office between 2004 and 2024, but from 2014 you were the right-hand man for Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister. You, despite not holding party office, you were one of the most powerful and influential figures in the SNP for several decades. And this point about personally feeling betrayed, there were a number of people who held office in the party who were also very invested and committed to the party, like Frank Rennie or Chapman and others who resigned very angry and upset about what happened. At the time, it felt like both yourself and Nicola Sturgeon were poo-pooing their concerns, saying nothing to see here, nothing wrong we know of at all, just be calm. Do you think that they are owed an apology of any description because they were the people that were raising the red flags, which weren't being given, as far as we could establish, proper credibility until the police got involved because the party wasn't treating them as credible?
Well, my answer really is vested, Sev, in the comments I've made about the proper processes that should be in place to govern the party's affairs, and that's what I think that's just part of the absolutely rudimentary part of what you have in place as an organisation. And what's failed here is Peter Murrell's conduct. That's what's failed. That's what's going wrong here, is that money has been used inappropriately. That's what's failed here. It's not. That's what's triggered all this. That's what it's all about. It's not that the systems failed. What's failed is that the systems were bypassed, as the police statement makes very clear today. And just as and I just say this as a point of importance about where, what was people's attitudes and views, there would be a prevailing sense of we're all part of this movement to be successful for to win Scottish independence, to bring electoral success for the SNP. How on earth could somebody be, acting inappropriately? Because, and what I'm trying to convey to you is the sense that I feel about other colleagues, that we're all bound together in an effort, a collective effort, to be as successful as we possibly can do. And you don't actually operate on the basis of thinking somebody is undermining that or damaging that, because that's not the way that I think. Chris McCall from Daily Record. Chris.
Thank you, First Minister. Can I just come back to an earlier question about whether ordinary SNP members, the types that you just described as, the decent people that are putting on the coffee mornings, etc. Can I just clarify, you're saying that if they did request a refund from the party, you're basically saying in no circumstances will you get one, they don't deserve some kind of redress?
Well, those are your words, Chris. I think party members have given their money in good faith to us, and party members will be feeling injured by what has happened. And I think they've got every right to feel very, very injured. And as their party leader, I want to say to those individuals that I am with them, because I feel exactly the same about that, and I'm one of those contributors to the party willingly. But secondly, what we've got to, that money doesn't exist. It's been taken away from us. So I simply pledged to the SNP, as I told the party, I would get the party in a fit state to fight a strong election campaign in 2026, and we've just done it. We've just done it based on the generosity of these party members. I warmly thank them for what they've contributed. But that money doesn't exist. It's been stolen from us.
Can I just ask one very quick follow-up question? I know obviously your government tomorrow will have a vote on independence. If that does lead to another referendum campaign, and whether it's in the short or the medium term, would you be confident in launching another online fundraiser, the type of which led to events that we're now discussing today?
Well, if you look at the concept of an online fundraiser, during the run-up to the general election that we've just had, we ran an online fundraiser in which I might need to get people to fill in the exact detail, but yeah, I think we originally tried to raise £100,000. We put it up to £150,000, and we ended up raising £175,000. So I think I've no worries about online fundraisers. I've also no worries about the confidence of the party membership about being willing to donate, because they've just done it very generously, and I'm really grateful to them for so doing. But I think why they did that was because they've got confidence in the leadership and the direction of the party, which I'm pleased about that. James Walker from the National. James.
Thank you, First Minister. I'd just like to jump a little bit on Chris McCall's question a wee bit, because you say that this is money that you don't have now, but there is the possibility of money that is recouped. There's obviously the outstanding £60,000 loan that the SNP still, I think, technically still owes Peter Murrell. What about that money, the money that might be recouped that you might have in the future? Will you make any sort of commitment to use that money, or to perhaps give it back to members or supporters who donated?
I think the issues there are that members have given money in good faith, and that good faith has been betrayed. And as I said, I'm very sorry that is the case, but it's the conduct of Peter Murrell that's got us into that position. Now, as for any attempts to reclaim money or the issues around about loan, these are some of the legal issues that we then get into, where I'm a little bit concerned about the parameters of the Contempt of Court Act. So if I can say no more on that question, because I think it gets us into issues that I don't think are settled today. Can I come to Simon Johnson from the Telegraph, please? Simon.
Thank you, First Minister. You say obviously the party had no idea because of the accounting methods that Peter Murrell was using, but I put it to you, there were some pretty big clues if you look at the indictment and the schedule that's been published. Namely, wouldn't you, if a £125,000 motorhome appeared outside your spouse's, outside your mother-in-law's property, wouldn't you ask questions of your spouse about where that had come from and who paid for it? Wouldn't you, if a £2,600 salt and pepper mills appeared in your kitchen, wouldn't you sort of go, hang on, how can we afford this? Wouldn't you, if a £2,500 coffee machine appeared in your kitchen, ask questions of your spouse about where this was coming from? So there were lots of clues, weren't there, that things weren't right?
Well, I think the issues that you raise are about the detail of the indictment, and I think certainly from all that I think is crystal clear here was there was offending behaviour which has been the subject of a guilty plea today, and that is the substance of the circumstances that we face today, and it's on the basis of that Peter Murrell has pleaded guilty in the court, in the High Court today.
Yeah, but if those things had turned up in my kitchen or in my mother's or I would have certainly asked my wife, how did this, how can we afford this? Where did it appear? I mean, there were lots of clues, weren't there?
There's these issues are the issues that have happened, and they're addressed in the guilty plea today. Mark McLaughlin, The Sun.
Hello, First Minister. I just want to go back to Peter Murrell's appointment. He was appointed on your watch. Sources have told us that he already had a bit of a bad reputation, that he couldn't be trusted. He even had the nickname Magpie Murrell. So I want to know if you recognise any of this, what your role was in his initial appointment. Do you regret it? And just on another question to come back on the husband-wife relationship. You said that's not in your gift, that it wasn't in your gift. But do you or did you think it was inappropriate?
On the question of the appointment, I was leader of the SNP when we went through a recruitment process to appoint a chief executive in probably about 2001 as part of a decision-making process within the party. Obviously, Peter Murrell was a successful candidate. He was employed for many years. The offending behaviour that we're talking about here, that's in the police note, started in 2010, long after I stopped being leader of the SNP. So I think and obviously by that time we were in government, so Peter Murrell had contributed towards the growth and success of the SNP. So I think the purpose of the appointment was crystal clear, to make sure the SNP was able to prosper.
You don't recognise that somebody that I gave you about previous warnings that he was untrustworthy?
Well, nothing. I heard nothing of that nature. No, I'm completely unaware of that. That's news to me. And then if there were issues about his conduct, well, they would have been aired in the recruitment process, and they certainly weren't. In relation to the questions about about Peter and his behaviour, he is an individual. He is exclusively responsible for his conduct. That's the way the law works, and he's committed the offences, and he shouldn't have.
On the husband and wife relationship,
well,
do you think that was inappropriate? Maybe gave him some aspect of cover that he wouldn't have had.
I'm simply saying he is exclusively responsible for his behaviour. David Walker.
Hi, First Minister. Obviously, on the indictment, the vehicles are now being accounted for, the motorhomes being impounded, the cars are being sold. What happened to the rest of the luxury goods? His pens that's still unaccounted for, there's watches. Where are they, and will they be returned to the party? And is it still your position that the motorhome was bought for political purposes? And the second one, are you quite relieved that the stink go to trial in the end? Are you relieved the stink go to trial when you pleaded guilty at the first occasion?
In relation to the items, I don't know the answer to the question, David. That is, again, will be part of the proceedings that have now got to be taken forward by the Crown, I assume. So I don't know the answer to that question, but obviously, when we know that, we'll be able to consider that. And I've got no idea why a camper van was purchased. We've just hired a bus for about 2.5 weeks in the election campaign. That made sense to me. We hired a bus, we covered it in our materials, and it's now back with Parks of Hamilton. And that seems a sensible use of resources to get us visibly around the country during the election campaign. What we could have needed a camper van for is beyond me. And then, and I'm glad that this process is reaching a conclusion, because it has been a process that has brought enormous strain to many people, including many members of the party's staff, and I'm glad that we're getting close to some form of conclusion. Tom Gordon. Tom.
Thanks, First Minister. Why are you so resistant to at least offering party members a refund? They might not take it up, but at least offer them that money, because Peter Murrell was responsible for his actions, but he did not steal in a vacuum. He stole within an organisation which failed to have adequate financial governance in place. Some £70 million flowed through the SNP while he was chief executive, and the party apparatus surely had a duty to safeguard that money, and it self-evidently failed because he was able to poggle you for 12 years. And if it hadn't been for a member of the public going to the police, he might be stealing from you still. Surely the party has a duty to recompense people it failed to protect.
I come back to the point that I made earlier on, that the actions of Peter Murrell, as described in the police statement, talk about carefully trying to hide his criminality with false receipts and accounting. So that is, it is whole-scale deception. It is deceiving the systems that are in place to exercise control. It is about deceiving the people who are the source of the donations to the party. So, in that respect, there are multiple victims here. The collective victim is the Scottish National Party, but there are multiple victims who have contributed that resource. But members of the party have, in my view, given that money for its proper purpose, and they would want us to continue to proceed to make sure that we do all that we can to achieve the greatest that we can with the resources that we have available to us. And that's exactly the commitment I give to party members today.
And the truth is that you were blinded by his party card. To coin a phrase, he was one of us, and so he wasn't given proper oversight.
What I'm saying, like, I've tried today, and I think you've seen me engage with you over many years, and intensely over the last couple of years, and very intensely in the last 6 weeks. And I've tried to basically just go through all of this with absolute candour. And what I'm saying to you is that I literally cannot get my head around this. I cannot fathom it, because I don't know where I would start thinking, oh, there must be a possibility that somebody in a key position is going to abuse their position. My mind doesn't work like that, Tom. Maybe it should. But, you know, I think the best of people who are trying to do their best endeavours to support our cause, and we have been badly let down by Peter in his actions, and that applies across the board to all of our party members and supporters. Okay, right, we've had a good run through things today. Thank you for coming at short notice. I appreciate your attendance today. Okay, thank you very much.